The explosion shook the top floor of the Hanseong Group building. Glass shattered. The screen announcing the $12 billion merger fell onto the boardroom table. The fire alarm went off. Shareholders screamed. Security guards drew their weapons. And in the middle of the smoke, Chairman Kang Tae-ho pointed a pistol at his own son. "You sold the company behind my back." The merger contract was open on the table. If signed, the family would lose control of the conglomerate. $38 billion. Decades of power. It would all end in minutes. Kang Min-jae kept his gaze steady. "I did what I had to do. You are bankrupt and won't admit it."
A lie.
His father still controlled 31% of the shares. But someone had silently bought more than 40% in the last few weeks. Someone invisible. Someone who now had more power than the founding family. The armored elevator opened. High heels echoing on the broken floor. Everyone looked, and Kang Min-jae's world stopped. Seo Yura, the woman who was kicked out of the Kang mansion 5 years ago, pregnant, crying, humiliated in front of the whole family. Now she wore an impeccable white suit, cold, untouchable, and behind her came lawyers. "The gun isn't necessary, Chairman," she said. "The company is no longer yours." Silence. She threw a folder on the table. Documents, statements, consolidated shareholding, 42%, the largest block in the company. "I called this assembly." The father lowered the gun slowly. "That is impossible." Yura smiled. "The impossible was kicking me out, believing I wouldn't come back." Min-jae felt the floor vanish. 5 years earlier, she was pregnant with his child. He knew, but his father threatened to cut his name from the will. He stayed silent, and she was thrown on the street under accusations of a pregnancy scam. She lost everything, including the baby, and now she was there, controlling the empire of the family that destroyed her. 72 hours earlier, Yura touched a contract on the table. The paper looked ordinary, but when her fingers touched it, the world changed. Numbers started spinning before her eyes, charts going up, then plummeting. She saw Hanseong lose $9 billion in 3 days if the merger was signed. She saw the younger brother embezzling funds to an account in Singapore. She saw the board betraying the chairman himself. And she saw something worse. She saw Kang Min-jae being arrested for fraud he didn't commit. She pulled her hand back. Blood ran from her nose. Her vision blurred. The power always took its toll. The further into the future, the higher the price. 5 years ago, she didn't know how to control it. Now she did, and she would use it to the limit. She created the Black Orion Fund with shell companies, anticipated crises, bought shares before scandals exploded, destroyed competitors before they even knew they were at war. And in silence, she bought Hanseong piece by piece. Not for money, but for revenge. Back in the burning room. "We are canceling the merger," she declared. The board divided immediately. Some knew, if the merger were signed, they would lose their money laundering schemes. Others wanted the deal to save their own skin. The patriarch breathed heavily. "What do you want?" Yura looked right at Min-jae. I want the presidency." The board murmured. She continued, "And a full audit." Today, the younger brother turned pale, because if they open the accounts, he goes to prison. Min-jae stepped closer to her. "Why now?" She stared at him, emotionless. "Because you chose power, and now you will learn the price." At that moment, the head of security ran in. "Chairman, the prosecutors are coming up. Arrest warrants for 3 directors." Chaos exploded, but Yura remained motionless, because she had already seen this, and she knew something no one there knew. The prosecutors weren't just coming for the directors. They were coming for Kang Min-jae, and he still had no idea. The doors of the room burst open violently. Prosecutors entered accompanied by police officers. Press cameras invaded the executive floor. The merger broadcast was still live. Millions watching. Kang Min-jae's name began appearing in the headlines in real time. Suspicion of fraud, market manipulation, insider trading. The patriarch shouted, "This is a setup," but the warrant was read aloud. Kang Min-jae was being accused of manipulating stocks before the merger announcement. If convicted, he would face more than 10 years in prison. The shareholders started panic selling. Hanseong's shares plummeted 18% in minutes, billions evaporating. Yura watched everything, cold, calculating. She had already seen that moment when she touched the contract 3 days earlier. She knew the prosecutors would come, but she also knew that Min-jae was innocent. It was the younger brother's fault. Kang Sejun, the man who embezzled money into secret accounts while feigning loyalty. Sejun was sweating. If Min Jae were arrested, he would take over as interim, and he would have time to cover his tracks. The prosecutor approached Min Jae. "Mr. Kang, you are under arrest." Min Jae looked at Yura. There was anger, but there was also something worse.
Despair.
"Was it you?" he asked quietly. She got close enough so that only he could hear. "If I wanted to destroy you, I already would have." He was handcuffed in front of the cameras, the air of the conglomerate being taken away, like a criminal. The family's reputation shattered. The patriarch felt ill and had to be supported. And then Yura made her move. "Suspend the sell orders," she ordered the financial director.
Buy.
The man's eyes widened. "The shares are falling."
Exactly.
She activated Black Orion. In minutes, companies linked to the fund began buying millions in shares.
Cheap.
While the market believed Han Seong was dying, she accumulated even more control. Sejun noticed. "You are profiting from this." She turned her face slowly. "I am saving what you are destroying." That night, Min Jae was in a cold interrogation room. The prosecutor threw bank statements on the table. Suspicious transfers. Purchase of shares days before the merger announcement. It looked too perfect, but something was wrong. Min Jae never authorized those operations. Meanwhile, Yura was in her secret office. She touched a tablet with the company's financial data. The world spun again.
Charts.
Names. Betrayals. She saw Sejun meeting a bank director in secret. She saw a payment. She saw the complete plan. But the vision went further. She saw something that made her lose her breath. If Min Jae were convicted, the company would go bankrupt in 6 months. If she saved him, he would discover the truth about the baby she lost. And that would change everything. The power burned inside her. Blood ran again. Her vision darkened for a few seconds. Every use was making it worse. She knew, if she kept pushing it, she could lose her sight for good. But giving up was not an option. The next day, the shares began to stabilize because the market noticed something strange. Someone was buying heavily. Rumors surfaced. Anonymous investor takes control. Sejun called an emergency board meeting. "We need to officially remove Min Jae," he declared, "for the good of the company." Some agreed. Others hesitated. Yura entered the room unannounced. "If you remove Min Jae now, the shares will fall another 25%. She placed a report on the table, proof that the prosecutors were also targeting the company's financial sector. If the audit begins, half of this board goes down with it. Silence. She then revealed the scam. "I have records of transfers to accounts linked to Mr. Sejun." His face lost its color. "That is fake." She stepped closer. "Do you want me to hand it over to the prosecutors right now?" The board began to switch sides. Greed is weak when it smells prison. Sejun slammed the table. "You are doing this out of revenge." She answered without hesitating. "I am doing it because you destroyed my life." And then she dropped the bomb. "And because the child I was expecting was the only legitimate heir to this family." The silence was absolute. Min Jae, who had just been temporarily released on bail thanks to a quiet legal move by Black Orion, heard the last words as he entered the room. The child. He didn't know she had lost it, never knew, and in that instant he realized he didn't just lose a woman. He lost an heir, and maybe everything. But Yura hasn't yet told the most devastating part, because what she saw in her last vision changes everyone's destiny. Min Jae stood motionless. "What do you mean by was?" The whole room held its breath. Yura held his gaze, cold on the outside, burning on the inside. "I lost that baby because I was kicked out, alone, without protection, without a private hospital, without the empire you protected." The words hit like knives. The patriarch, still pale, murmured, "That proves nothing." Yura turned to him. "It proves that your son's only direct heir died because of this family." The board started whispering. Scandal. If the press found out, Han Seong's reputation would crumble. Min Jae felt the weight crush his chest. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" She laughed bitterly. "You were too busy choosing your last name." Silence. But then, she touched the folder of documents on the table, and the world spun. Vision. White corridors, a hospital, an incubator, a crying baby, and a nurse handing an envelope to someone.
No.
It wasn't possible. She pulled her hand away forcefully, her heart racing. 6 years ago, she woke up in a public hospital after fainting on the street. They told her the baby didn't survive. She never saw the body, never held it, never had a goodbye, because she was alone. But the vision was clear. The baby didn't die. Someone took it. She turned pale. Min Jae noticed. "What is it?" Yura was breathing heavily. If her child were alive, he would be the legitimate heir to everything. And someone might have used that as a weapon. Sejun watched in silence, calculating. If there was a child, his whole plan would fall apart. Later, Yura invaded the old hospital with a warrant bought through influence. She paid dearly, very dearly, went up to the dead archives, touched the box with her name. Vision. Money being transferred. A man wearing gloves receiving a newborn. Patriarch Kong signing a check. She fell to her knees. He knew. He paid to take her baby away. To protect the family name. It wasn't death. It was kidnapping. Tears she had held back for 5 years finally fell. But along with them came something worse. Hatred. Meanwhile, Sejun met a man in an underground parking lot. She is getting too close. The man replied, then finish what you started. Sejun handed over a photo. A 5-year-old child, living under a false identity, raised by a family paid to keep quiet. If she finds out officially, the controlling interest changes. The man nodded, understood. The next morning, Hanseon's shares rose 11%. The market reacted to the possible reversal of Minji's arrest. Yura called a press conference. There are signs of internal manipulation in the financial sector. The audit begins today. It was a declaration of war. Sejun stormed into her private office. You are destroying everything. She stood up. No. I am cleaning it up. He stepped closer. Do you think you can beat this family? She stared at him. I already have. I'm just deciding who gets to survive. He gave a half smile. What if I told you your past isn't as dead as you think? Her heart stopped for a second. He knew. Before she could react, she received a message on her cell phone. Unknown number. A photo. A child getting into a black car. And the caption, if you want the truth, come alone. Her blood ran cold because in the vision, the car exploded. The black car was parked in an abandoned warehouse at the port. Yura got out alone, without security guards, without the press, without apparent fear. But inside, every heartbeat felt like a countdown. She had already seen that car exploding, saw the fire, saw twisted metal, saw blood. But she didn't see the child's face. That meant one thing. The future could still change. She walked to the warehouse. The door opened slowly. A man emerged from the shadows. The same one from the parking lot with Sejun. You came alone. Good choice. Where's the child? He pointed to the car. In the back seat. A small silhouette. Motionless. Her world stopped. She stepped closer. Every step heavy. When she touched the car door. Vision. Detonator. Remote control. Sejun watching from afar. Explosion in 30 seconds. She pulled her hand back quickly. The man noticed. Any problem? Yura forced calmness. I want to see the face. He hesitated. Mistake. She stepped forward, grabbed his wrist, and took the remote control with a swift movement. It wasn't elegant. It was desperation. He tried to react. She hit him with her heel. The remote dropped. She ran to the car, opened the door. It wasn't the child. It was a doll, with real explosives strapped around it. Trap. She threw the detonator far away and ran. The explosion tore through the warehouse. The impact threw her to the ground. The sound vanished. Everything went white. Minutes later, siren, smoke. Yura tried to get up, her hearing returning little by little, blood dripping from her forehead. She almost died, and the child was never there. It was a test. Sejun wanted to confirm. She knew too much. At Hanseong's headquarters, the shares plummeted 9% when news of the explosion leaked. Main shareholder involved in criminal incident. The board panicked. The patriarch demanded an immediate meeting. Min-jae arrived furious. It was Sejun. Yura entered the room still with a bandage on her forehead. Everyone fell silent. She looked more dangerous wounded. They tried to kill me, she said simply. The patriarch slammed the table. This is out of control. She looked right at him. It is, because you bought a grandson, as if he were a disposable asset. The room froze. Min-jae turned to his father. Is this true? The patriarch remained silent. Too much silence. Enough of an answer. Min-jae lost control. Where is he? The old man breathed heavily. I protected the family name. You kidnapped my son. The board began to divide openly. Some were already calling lawyers. If that came to light, the company's value could fall by half. Yura felt a new vision trying to emerge, but she resisted. Every use was getting worse. Her vision on the left side failed for seconds. If she pushed it now, she could lose it permanently. But she needed to know. She touched the table. Vision. A simple house. Countryside. A woman receiving money monthly. The child drawing the Hanseong logo without knowing what it means. And something worse. She saw Sejun ordering them to solve the problem if Yura continued investigating. She pulled her hand back, panting. We have little time. Min-jae held her shoulders. Is he alive? She looked into his eyes. For the first time, vulnerable. Yes. His world changed in that instant. It wasn't about shares anymore, nor about the presidency. It was about blood.
Heir. Continuity.
If this child appeared publicly, the controlling interest would change completely because the patriarch couldn't ignore the only legitimate grandson. And investors love family stability. Sejun entered the room slowly, clapping slowly. What an emotional scene. Min-jae lunged at him. Punches, chairs falling, security guards separating them. Sejun wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. Do you really want to bring that child into this hell? Yura answered before Min-jae. I will bring him, and you will pay for every second he was kept away from me. Sejun smiled, then run, because some decisions move millions.
He left.
And Yura's phone vibrated. New message, an address, and one sentence. Last chance. She knew. This time it wasn't a bluff. The address led to a simple house in the countryside, far from the mirrored buildings, far from the billions. Yura and Min-jae went together. No press, no visible escort, but with a team positioned miles away. It wasn't just a rescue. It was an operation that could change the control of an empire. If that child were officially recognized, Hanseong's shareholding structure would change. The patriarch couldn't ignore the only direct heir, and institutional investors would press for stable succession. Money would react even before the truth became public. They stopped in front of the gate. Yura felt her heart skip a beat. 5 years. 5 years believing she had buried a son. She touched the gate. Vision. The woman who cared for the child receiving monthly deposits from an account linked to the patriarch. She also saw something else. Recent transfers coming from a shell company linked to Sejun. He was preparing to disappear with the boy. She pushed the gate. The door of the house opened. A woman in her 40s appeared, nervous. I knew this day would come. Min-jae entered first. Where is he? The woman pointed to the bedroom. The boy was sitting on the floor drawing. When Yura saw him, the world stopped. The eyes, just like Minji's, the same concentrated look. He looked up. Who are you? The voice was small, but firm. Yura fell to her knees, her hands trembling. She wanted to hug him, but was afraid of scaring him. Min-jae stood still, not knowing how to approach something he never knew was alive. The woman explained, I received money to raise him as my own. They said it was to protect him from family fights. Protection, a convenient lie. Yura felt another vision trying to emerge, but this time it came without touch. The power was becoming uncontrollable. She saw cars approaching the house, armed men, saw the boy being taken by force. She stood up immediately. We need to leave now. Min-jae didn't question it. He picked the boy up. The boy resisted. Hey, I don't know you. You will. Min-jae said, his voice firm. I promise. The first car turned the corner. Men got out. Visible weapons. Sejun wasn't playing. It was no longer just a corporate dispute. It was the elimination of an heir. Yura held the boy's hand, felt the power pulse. Probabilities began to spin in her mind. If they ran down the main road, 70% chance of interception. If they crossed the field, 40%. If they split up, 20%, but splitting up meant risk for the child. She chose the field. They ran out the back. Gunshots echoed, dirt kicking up around them. Min-jae fell, protecting his son with his own body. Yura grabbed a rock and hit one of the approaching men. It wasn't strength, it was desperation. The security guards she hired arrived seconds later. Quick confrontation. The invaders retreated. Silence returned to the field. The boy was crying, Min-jae hugging him. Yura watched. The entire empire now fit in that man's arms. And at that instant, her phone vibrated. Market notification. Internal rumor leaked. Possible secret heir of the Kong family. Shares rose 14% in minutes. Investors betting on succession stability. The market reacting before official confirmation. Money is faster than morals. Min-jae looked at Yura. Let's announce it. She hesitated. If they announced it, Sejun would attack definitively. But hiding meant remaining vulnerable. She stared at her son. He still didn't understand anything, but his name already moved billions. Let's turn this into a shield, she said. That night, emergency press conference. Cameras, shareholders, divided board. Yura held the boy's hand, Min-jae by her side. This is Kong Jaiwan, legitimate heir of the Kong family and shareholder by right of succession. The patriarch watched from the mansion, pale, defeated. If legally confirmed, part of his shares would migrate to his grandson. And who would manage them until he came of age? Yura. Sejun stormed into the boardroom. This is illegal. But before he could continue, the screen behind him changed. Preliminary audit released. Illegal transfers. Offshore accounts. Name, Kong Sejuan. The prosecutors had received the documents minutes earlier. Sent anonymously. Yura didn't send them. Min-jae didn't send them. Someone else was playing. And this person knew their every move. The police were already on their way to the headquarters. Sejuan realized it. There was no political way out anymore. So he chose another one. He pulled out a gun, pointed it right at his own nephew. If I don't get this empire, nobody does. Time stopped. The gun pointed at Kong Jaewon's head. Cameras broadcasting live. Shareholders watching in shock. Hanseong's market value fluctuating in real time. If that trigger were pulled, it wouldn't just be a family tragedy. It would be the collapse of a conglomerate. Min-jae put himself in front of his son. Shoot me.
Sejuan laughed.
You were always the perfect heir. Always the favorite. Even when you were weak. Yura didn't scream. Didn't run. She breathed and let the power take over. Probabilities began to form in her mind. If she advanced, 80% chance of a shot. If Min-jae tried to react, 65%. If no one moved, 40%. But there was a variable. Sejuan's pride. She spoke with a firm voice. You have already lost. He hesitated. The tiny fraction of a second she needed. The prosecutors already have enough evidence for preventive arrest. Your assets are blocked. Your accounts frozen.
Partial lie. They weren't blocked yet.
But they were being investigated. Fear passed through his eyes. She took another step. Shooting only confirms guilt. Running still gives you a chance. His hand trembled. A siren echoed in the building. Police coming up. The probability changed. 15% chance of a shot.
He took a step back.
Min-jae took advantage of it. He lunged. The gun went off. The sound exploded in the room. Yura felt the impact before hearing the scream. Min-jae fell. The shot hit his shoulder. It wasn't fatal, but it was enough for chaos. Security guards immobilized Sejuan. Police entered seconds later. He was handcuffed in front of the cameras. The villain of his own family. Hanseong's shares plummeted 8% with the gunshot. Then they rose 19% when the arrest was confirmed. The market loves stability, even when it comes with blood. At the hospital, Min-jae was conscious. Jaewon was sleeping in a chair nearby. Yura watched the two of them, silent. He opened his eyes. Did you foresee this? She hesitated. I saw possibilities. And you chose the one that kept me alive. She didn't answer, because the truth was worse. She saw a version where he died, and chose a path where he survived, but her own health worsened. Her vision, on the left side, failed again.
Dark spots.
The power was taking its toll. He noticed. You're paying a price, aren't you? She looked away. There is always a price when messing with billions. He held her hand. I failed you. Yes. The answer came without softness. But then she continued. And I failed myself for loving you. Heavy silence. It wasn't reconciliation. It was acknowledgement. At Hanseong's headquarters, the board was at war. With Sejuan arrested, the interim presidency needed to be decided. The patriarch was fragile. Public scandal. Secret grandsons. Attempted murder. Money laundering. Investors demanded new leadership. The largest shareholding block was in Yura's hands. And legally, Jaewon was now a beneficiary of part of his grandfather's shares. Adding it all up, the effective control was hers. The patriarch called a private meeting. You want the presidency, he said. I already have control. He closed his eyes. Pride destroyed. If you take over, the war doesn't end. She answered coldly. I didn't come back for peace. At that moment, the legal director hurried in. We have a bigger problem. He placed a tablet on the table. Breaking news. A foreign fund initiated an aggressive purchase of Hanseong shares during the chaos. Hostile takeover in progress. Someone took advantage of the family crisis to attack. If they bought 12% more, they could force a restructuring and remove the entire family. Yura touched the screen. Vision. A name appeared. The investor behind the fund. Someone from her past. Someone who helped her build Black Orion. Someone who knew about her son. And who now wanted the entire empire. She whispered the name. Park Do-yeon. The man who financed her revenge. And who never does anything for free. The name echoed in her mind like an old debt. Park Do-yeon. The man who appeared when she was broken. He was the one who believed in her power. He was the one who put the first million into Black Orion. And he was the one who always said, I don't invest in companies. I invest in people who hate losing. Now he was buying Hanseong.
Not as an ally.
As a predator. The next morning, the market went on alert. The foreign fund had already accumulated 9%. If it reached 15%, it could demand a seat on the board. If it reached 20%, It could force an extraordinary vote. If it gathered dissatisfied investors, it could tear the entire empire from the hands of the Kong family. Yura entered the boardroom.
He doesn't want dividends.
He wants control. The patriarch struck his cane on the floor. Then block it. It's not simple. He is using 5 different funds. Legally independent. Min Jae, still with his arm immobilized, walked in right behind her. How much time do we have? 2 days. 2 days before the hostile takeover became inevitable. Yura arranged a meeting with Doyen at a luxury hotel. Private room. A view of the city. They both learned to dominate. He looked elegant.
Calm.
As if nothing was at war. You've grown, he said, analyzing her. But you still react with emotion when it comes to the Kong family. You are attacking the company where my son is the heir. He smiled. Exactly. Heavy silence. You promised to help me, she said. I helped. You wanted revenge. You got it. Now I want a return. He placed a tablet on the table. Projections. If he took over Hanseong, he would divide assets, sell subsidiaries, and profit billions in 3 years. It's not personal, he added. It's strategy. She stared at him. Did you know about my son? He didn't deny it. I found out before you did. Her internal ground gave way for a second. And you didn't tell me. Information is currency. I use it when it's worth more. She felt the power pulse, but she didn't touch anything. She was tired, her left vision almost fading completely in moments of stress.
What do you want? She asked.
He tilted his head. Marriage. The air grew heavy. An agreement.
You and I.
We officially merged the funds. I stopped the hostile takeover. I protect your son. And together we assume definitive control. She stood motionless. Marriage by contract. Financial shielding. Strategic merger. Romance as a weapon. And Min Jae. He shrugged. He was always an emotional heir. You need someone cold. She stood up. I won't trade an empire for another prison. He held her wrist, not with force, but with intention. If you refuse, I keep buying. In 48 hours, you lose everything. At Hanseong's headquarters, the board was already dividing again. Some directors were secretly negotiating with Doyen's fund. Internal betrayal. There always is. Min Jae entered Yura's office. He wants you, doesn't he? She didn't answer immediately. He understood. I left you alone once. I won't leave you again. She looked at him. There was still guilt,
But now there was also decision.
this isn't about us. It's about protecting Jaiwan. Then tell me what to do. She thought fast. If she accepted the marriage, she would gain immediate protection, but she would lose autonomy. If she refused, she would face open war. She needed another move. She touched the takeover report. Vision. Doyen confident, but vulnerable to one detail. He was over-leveraging, using heavy credit to buy the shares. If the price rose too fast, he would be exposed. She opened her eyes, smiled. Let's make the price explode. The next morning, official announcement. Hanseong would initiate an aggressive stock buyback using reserved cash. In addition, it would disclose new anticipated international contracts. The market reacted with euphoria. Shares skyrocketed 27% in hours. The cost of Doyen's acquisition almost doubled. He called immediately. Are you trying to break me? She answered calmly. I am testing your limit. Silence on the other end. He realized she was no longer the woman who needed an investor. She was an adversary. But then he said something that changed everything. Do you think I am alone? She froze. He continued. Patriarch Kong came to me first. Her world stopped. The old man was willing to hand over part of the empire to stop her from having total control. Final betrayal. And this time it came from within. The air grew heavy. Patriarch Kong, allied with Park Doyen, the same man who kicked a pregnant Yura out, was now willing to hand over part of the empire to the investor who wanted to take everything from her. It wasn't just a dispute. It was total war. Yura entered the Kong family mansion unannounced. Gates opened. Staff bowed their heads. The old patriarch was in the library, alone. So it's true, she said. He didn't deny it. You grew too big, too fast. I fought for it, and you will destroy everything in the process. She stepped closer. I am saving what you almost lost out of pride. He rested his hands on the desk. You want absolute control. That is not salvation. It is revenge. She answered without hesitating. Revenge is also a strategy when the enemy is inside your own family. Silence. He took a deep breath. Doyen offered me stability. You offer war. She tilted her head. He offered to keep you as honorary chairman while he dismantles the company piece by piece. I offer to keep the legacy intact. The old man didn't answer, but his eyes revealed doubt. She decided to play her final card. If you support Doyen, I will make it public that you paid to hide your own grandson. The threat dropped like a bomb. You wouldn't do that. I would do worse. The patriarch realized it. She was no longer the girl who was kicked out. She was the largest shareholder, and she was ready to burn the Kong name if necessary. Meanwhile, Park Doyen called an international press conference. He would officially announce his intention for a hostile takeover. The market waited. If he declared confidence, institutional investors might follow him. The stock could skyrocket beyond her control. Min Jae entered Yura's office. My father is hesitating, but he is afraid of you. Good. Too much fear also turns into an enemy. She remained silent. He was right. If she pushed too hard, the patriarch could transfer shares to international trusts and block decisions. She needed something bigger, something that would end the war for good. She touched an old Black Orion contract. Vision. Doyen 5 years ago, signing a secret agreement with a hidden clause, a clause he believed he had erased, but he didn't. If the fund used more than 60% leverage in a hostile takeover, operational control could be suspended due to an internal breach of contract. He was over 72%. If she triggered it, she would temporarily freeze his purchases. But it would also reveal that Black Orion had power over its own investors. Risky, extreme, dangerous, but decisive. She opened her eyes. Let's end this today. Doyen's press conference began. The Orion Global Fund officially initiates an offer for the majority acquisition of Hanseong. Before he could finish, the market screens interrupted. Emergency announcement. Contractual clause activated. Mandatory internal audit of the Orion Global Fund. Operations frozen due to possible over-leveraging. Hanseong's shares skyrocketed. His fund shares plummeted. Doyen stood silent in front of the cameras. For the first time, without control. At the mansion, the patriarch watched. Slowly, he began to laugh. She is more cruel than I ever was. Min Jae received an urgent call. Doyen wants a private meeting. Immediate. Yura knew. It was the final confrontation. At the top of the Hanseong building, they met. No lawyers, no cameras, just the two of them. You betrayed me, he said. I learned from the best. He walked to the edge of the terrace. If I fall, I take half the market with me. Not if you fall first. She revealed something he didn't expect. I bought 18% of your fund in the last few weeks. Absolute silence. You taught me not to depend on anyone. Now I am your biggest investor. He laughed, but there was no humor. Then what do you want? She answered clearly. Leave Hanseong. Sell your positions to me at a discount. In exchange, I won't activate the second clause. He narrowed his eyes. What clause? She stepped closer. The one that reveals your illegal operations in 3 countries. The wind blew hard. He realized it. The war was lost, but there was still something he could destroy. He spoke quietly. You didn't see everything, Yura. Her heart accelerated. What do you mean? He smiled. Your power shows probabilities, but it doesn't show emotional choices. Her phone vibrated. Message. Hospital. Jaiwan. She opened it. Photo of her son in the bed. Unconscious. Caption. Not every attack is corporate. The world lost its sound. The image of Jaiwan unconscious in the hospital bed burned on the screen. Yura didn't think. She ran. Elevator. Car. Siren. Nothing seemed fast enough. Min Jae was already on his way when he received the same message. Doyen stood alone on the terrace, watching the city. He didn't smile, because he didn't order it. At the hospital, security guards blocked the corridor. Jaiwan was in the ICU. Severe food poisoning, but not accidental. Traces of a substance administered in a small dose. Control. A test. The doctor spoke firmly. He is stable, but it was intentional. Min Jae exploded. Who did this? Yura stood motionless, feeling the power press against her mind. If she used it now, she could find out, but something inside her trembled. Every recent vision was costing more. Dark spots dominating her left vision. If she pushed too hard, she could go blind. Permanently. But it was her son. She touched the medical record. Vision. A hand swapping the glass of juice. A recognizable ring. The Kong family ring. The patriarch. Not directly, but by order. The intention wasn't to kill. It was to scare. To force Yura to back down from the war. She pulled her hand back violently. It was him. Min Jae froze. My father, he wanted to make me choose. At that instant, Min Jae made a decision. Then it's over. At the mansion, the patriarch received an unexpected visit from his own son. You touched my son. The old man maintained his posture. I protected the legacy. Min-jae stared at him like never before. I am the legacy, and now he is. The patriarch tried to justify it. If she continues this war, we all lose.
No.
You lose control. Silence. Min-jae placed a document on the table. Official transfer of his shares to Jaiwan. Fiduciary administration under the joint responsibility of Yura and an independent board. If you touch him again, I will make everything public, including the kidnapping. The patriarch realized it. He lost his son. He lost his grandson. He lost control. And for the first time, he looked old. At the hospital, Yura received a call from Doyen. It wasn't me. She believed him because she had seen it. I know. Silence. Your power is failing, isn't it? He asked. She didn't answer. When do you stop touching documents? She hung up because the answer was simple.
Soon.
Very soon. The next morning, official announcement. Patriarch Kong was resigning from the presidency for health reasons, transferring his remaining shares to a trust in his grandson's name. The executive presidency would be assumed by Seo Yura, the first woman to lead Han-seong. Shares skyrocketed 32%. The market celebrating stability. Public victory, but the price was private. In the president's office, now hers, Yura closed the door. She touched the desk one last time. Vision.
No charts.
No numbers. Only darkness. The power was ending. She felt the left side of her vision disappear completely. Silent tears. She won, but she would lose what made her win. Min-jae entered. Jaiwan is awake. She smiled. For the first time, without a strategy. Then it was worth it. He stepped closer. And us. She looked at him. Love was never simple. It was always a risk. We are no longer enemies, but we aren't innocent either. He nodded. Can we start from zero? She thought. Without power, without revenge, without war. Only choice. We can try. But at that moment, the legal director hurried in. President, we have one last problem. He placed a report on the desk. The final audit revealed something hidden. 5 years ago, the order to remove the baby didn't come only from the patriarch. There was another signature authorizing the operation. Kong Min-jae's signature. The world stopped. She turned slowly to him. Did you know? The room fell silent. The report still open on the table. The signature was clear. Kong Min-jae. Date from 5 years ago. Authorization for air protection procedures. Yura didn't scream, didn't cry. She just asked, did you know? Min-jae didn't look away, but he also didn't answer immediately. And that second felt like an eternity. I knew my father was going to kick you out of the house, he said, finally. But I didn't know he would fake the baby's death. Her heart tightened. Then why did you sign? He took a deep breath. Because he told me you were being threatened, that there were investors wanting to use the pregnancy for blackmail. He said he would protect you both, away from the family. She closed her eyes. The power didn't come anymore. No vision, no confirmation, only the choice to believe it or not. You trusted him. I was trying to save you, and you lost me. Silence. He took a step closer. When I found out you had lost the baby, I destroyed half the company from the inside. I sabotaged my father's decisions without him noticing. I didn't know about the secret adoption. She analyzed every word, without power, without an advantage, only instinct. And then she realized something, the pattern of the transfers. The second signature wasn't an original digital one. It was a later validation, inserted months later. Internal fraud. She called the legal director back. Check the exact date of authentication. Tense minutes. The result appeared. Min-jae's signature was digitally attached 3 months after the supposed agreement. He didn't authorize it. He was used by the patriarch to share the blame. Yura let out the breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Min-jae closed his eyes. His own father turned him into an involuntary accomplice. At the mansion, Old Kong received the official notification. Criminal investigation reopened. Kidnapping of a minor. Document fraud. Abuse of corporate power. He didn't resist, didn't deny it. He just sat down. The empire he built with obsession crumbled by his own decisions. Weeks later, the market stabilized. Han-seong stronger. Restructured. Board renewed. Sejuan formally indicted. Patriarch removed. Park Doyen sold his positions at a strategic loss, but preserved part of his fund. Before leaving the country, he sent one last message to Yura. You won without power. Now you are truly dangerous. She didn't answer. On the company terrace, at sunset, Yura watched the city. No visions, no pain, no bleeding. The silence in her mind was strange, but also liberating. Min Jae approached. The board officially approved Jaiwon as the future majority heir. She nodded. And you? I am going to rebuild my position. Not as an heir, as an executive who deserves it. She stared at him. There was no more war in his eyes, only decision. Does that mean we are on the same side? He answered. It means that, this time, I choose you before the last name. She was silent for a few seconds. 5 years ago, she was kicked out pregnant, without power, without protection. Today, she was the president of a billionaire conglomerate, recognized mother of the legitimate heir. And she didn't need to predict the future anymore, because she learned something greater. Money is a weapon. Love is a risk. Power is obsession.
But choice is destiny.
She held out her hand. He took it, not as a contract, not as a strategy, but as a decision. Down below, Hanseong's illuminated sign shined, not as a symbol of revenge, but as proof. She came back,
Not to destroy.
but to command. And this time, no one could kick her out again.